Hi guys, Nikki here. I wanted to share with you some of my impressions on Conscious Loving, the journey to co-commitment, a way to be fully together without giving up yourself, by Gay and Kathlyn Hendricks. Being someone who's been in recovery as a result of coming from a home with adverse childhood experiences, the vocabulary and concepts surrounding unconscious loving is all very familiar to me. Gay and Kathlyn describe, quote, conscious loving as relationships that are free of mistrust, disharmony, and unspoken words. On a personal note, one of the first rules I learned as a child was not to trust people. Not trusting people then naturally led to a lot of conflict and chaos. And depending on a child's willfulness, this can result in a lot of internal turmoil in the least, and also just a lot of outward chaos. Hurtful behaviors then turn into shame, secrets, and hiding. The Hendricks point out that most of us are born into families that are full of conflict, or families who avoid conflict at all cost, or a combination of the two, which shines light on both sides of the coin of codependency. I like the way they describe codependence by actually defining what dependent means, as being an existence that's determined by something else and subordinate. This really speaks to the inequality that's experienced in dysfunctional homes. In families with conflict, the squeaky wheel is the one that gets the grease, and depending on how your dysfunctional role models are, it's easy to see how aggressive behavior is rewarded in families that don't have consistency or healthy boundaries. And it's also easy to see how being around aggressors, other people take on the role of being peacemakers just to keep things manageable. I love how the Hendricks point out that the codependent is addicted to control and approval. I often say in a 12-step fellowship that I belong to that control is my drug, but as pointed out in this book, it's also approval. We attempt to meet our needs through manipulating others into getting what we want. And we believe that our self-worth is defined by what other people think of us, not realizing that the most important relationship that we can have is with ourselves. It's easy to see how this need for approval and acceptance can lead to people-pleasing and puts us in a really vulnerable position if we aren't around healthy people. There's a list of relationship issues that are offered in the book in order to see if you have a tendency towards codependency. And these qualities point out the tendency to want to fix others, the constant need for other people's validation of you, repeated attempts to stuff your feelings, etc. They also call these commonly held traits as dysfunctional patterns, which clearly defines the repetitive and destructive nature of these behaviors. So with the clear description of what it means to be codependent, the Hendricks then describe what it means to be co-committed in relationships. They describe it as two or more people supporting each other and being whole and complete individuals. This includes taking responsibility for your own life. There are no victims in healthy adult relationships. With no blame or shame, the energy that goes into relationship can be expressed in harmonious and creative ways. Some things that can get in the way of that are seeds of unconscious loving. And these seeds are planted very early in childhood development, especially if no close connection with a caregiver can be achieved. Aside from the ability to bond with another, the effects of childhood wounding significantly impairs our ability to be in relationship with ourselves and others. I really like how they describe the healthy flow of relationships fluctuating back and forth from intimacy and independence or space. I think anytime I allow my life to mimic the rhythmic movement of energy, the healthier I am. And I also like later in the book where they describe the amoeba and how it expands and contracts unless it repeatedly is attacked, and then it stays in a contracted state. I like to think as above, so below. When people expand and put themselves out there, if the experience becomes negative due to judgment and harsh criticism, we eventually shut down. In the context of childhood development, it's important for children to be able to explore the world around them, but also know that there is a safe space to come back to for integrating and learning from experiences. As the authors point out, when we return to our loved ones and express our vulnerability, if we're shamed and blamed for our activity, especially if this foray outside of our comfort zone was difficult, it really has a negative effect on our ability to both believe in ourselves and to trust others. When we have a critical caregiver, we become programmed with self-limiting beliefs like I'm not good enough, I'm wrong or defective, and I can't do anything right. For me, this has led to a lot of fear and unwillingness to take risks because of a fear of failure and ridicule. I personally have had intimacy and self-esteem issues throughout my life. Even though I've, gotten a degree, I have a beautiful home, beautiful family. The authors talk about the shock of awakening, and I cried the first time I recognized how much my upbringing was still impacting my life. Repeating patterns of behavior were playing out again and again. And what I came to realize, though, was that these patterns that I fell into were not defects of my character, but rather a coping mechanism of cause and effect that reflected the environment that I was raised in. That helped me to not feel like I was such a loser or that I was alone in my life experience, just that I was fulfilling the role that I had been given in my family. The Hendricks state that there's a choice point in our adult relationships, and you either choose to inquire into the source of those issues and take full responsibility for them and tell the full truth about them to your partner, or you choose to become codependent. Whether telling the truth, you choose to withhold, you choose to withdraw and project. And I have done all those things. I have withheld what I was feeling. I neglected my own needs. Rather than express my vulnerability, I stuffed my feelings. I stuffed myself with food, with alcohol, with entertainment, with other people's drama. I withdrew through isolation and avoidance of intimacy, and I projected by accusing my husband of not loving me, when the truth of the matter is that I never learned to love myself. If I could identify one point in the book that was difficult for me to grasp, it's the section in relationship traps that stands out for me, and the part where they said letting people get away with killing themselves. I'm torn between the paradox of allowing people the freedom to be autonomous and have choices versus setting a clear ultimatum. Either you enter in this co-committed relationship with me or I'm out of here. Admittedly, my relationship with my husband could be better if we were both working on ourselves and journeying to co-commitment together. But my commitment to have and to hold in sickness and health reminds me of the need for patience and understanding. Through my own healing process, I found that relationship with life improved greatly when I was able to make a commitment to let go of my need to dictate how other people live their lives, which included letting go of my own need to be right. By keeping the focus on how I can meet my own need for love and approval, I'm able to give people the space to more fully express themselves. I'm more. I allow them to be more. As a breath worker, I think that this book really is helpful, and I really appreciate the part where they describe what a good friend is. You could just replace friend with breath worker here. It would go something like this. A good breath coach is someone who encourages you to feel your feelings and be okay with being with them for as long as it takes for them to work themselves out. I've struggled with being the friend or wife or mother who is constantly trying to fix things for others and not being the one to empower people to have greater inner strength and autonomy. It's such a paradox. We have this drive within us to help others, but I think the key is to finding ways to help others find their own solutions. This will be an obvious challenge for me as a breathwork facilitator. As I struggle with my own codependency, I have to remind myself that we all have access to our higher self and that we don't have to fix other people. It will be important for me too to avoid the compulsion to fix others and instead learn to lend out my recovery tools if someone comes to me asking for help. I guess the key is to waiting for them to ask for help and not just automatically offering solutions and being like, here, let me fix that for you. I have come to appreciate how the practice of the alchemy meditation helps to identify feelings and sensations. This is an effective way to harmonize and come into coherence in a relationship of giving and receiving. I look forward to the creative process of co-committed relationships, both professionally and personally. Thanks for listening.